The purpose of this video presentation is to illustrate how two different 18th century carvers would interpret one pattern.
And you will notice in this video that we have two different contemporary carvers doing that crest rail design in two different executions.
The subject is a crest rail of a mahogany side chair made in Philadelphia during the mid-1760s. The art of carving has been expressed throughout the centuries in many different materials. Wood is an excellent medium for carving. Most appealing to Fred and myself is the wood carving executed in the furniture and architecture of our early American colonies. More specifically, the work produced in Philadelphia during the mid-18th century.
As carvers, the drawing board is the starting point for the work that we do. It's important that we lay out the pattern on paper first. Once the drawing is completed, it's important that we align it with the actual product that we are duplicating. At that point, we can make our adjustments. We use a artist's vellum drawing paper. It's a cotton product that can be actually seen through, and drawings can be transferred through it just with the graphite from the pencil that we use. It's somewhat translucent. You can see through it so that you can align things properly.
Once the pattern has been transferred to the wood, we just cut it out with a handsaw. Back in the 18th century, they would have used a bow saw and just make relief cuts. Get it kind of roughed in first, make a few relief cuts, and then do your best to hang on to the line with the handsaw. Another relief cut. I'm actually below this surface, because this surface is here, and this gets carved back. So I'm okay, basically where I'm at right now. Symmetry in the 18th century was much different than what standards we hold symmetry to today. Back in the 18th century, when they were developing a pattern, they would have drawn a center line and one half of the pattern. And they would have flipped the pattern to the other side of center, and they would not have bothered to plot points from one side of center to the other. And that would have been sufficient.
Once the pattern has been transferred to the wood, we then select tools that we will use to outline the carving that we intend to relieve. Once the outline is completed, we then will select a medium-sized gouge to begin to relieve the wood around the picture that we're creating. Want to lower the field to the point of where it matches the depth that we've established. So that process will take a considerable amount of time.
Halfway.
We need to go back and forth because there is a process of lowering the field to the depth that we can stamp the carving or outline it each time we carve it. So the outline will lower the field approximately maybe 1/16 of an inch or so, and if we need to go down 1/8 of an inch, then we'll have to lower it several times with the gouge. Sometimes we have to change direction because of the way the wood grain works. You may see as we're working that we're cutting across the grain. The reason we do that is that we don't have to change direction. We can cut across the grain and be very consistent in not having to worry about the wood tearing out. To make your trout, Ben? Once we reach the bottom of the depth that we want, we then will switch to practically a flat tool such as a bench chisel. And we want to use that to establish the surface that will be the final surface in the bottom of the depth cut. And that will then have to be really focusing on the grain direction, because there's when you will potentially reach some tear out.
Working my way down to it. Now I think what we're going to find is as we come up into this area here, I think this surface is actually going to kind of pitch in, but I'll have to reference the chair before I get to that point.
We're going to end up coming into some tight spaces where there's corners and places that you can't reach, and we have some specialty tools for cutting into those corners that would have a skew shape ground on them that you can actually reach into the tightest of corners.
One of the interesting things is when your tool selection, you know, you got to know when to switch arcs. This is a little bit got more of a curve to it than this. This is a flatter curve. This is probably a number 3 or 4. This is a 5. So this whole thing has been a combination of 3s and 5s.
this point. Once I get a shoulder established, then I use a mallet. If there's places I need to get really deep, because then it guides you.
Lay these lines out. I have to draw them on there, and then I'll start valleying each one of those troughs. So that should go pretty quickly. And then once we have that kind of established, I'll start to have to really slow down and start to do a lot of comparing. Once we've established all of the different levels between the background and the ornamented foreground, we begin to get the general shape of the foreground. So we'll start to, if we need to take corners off or do an over/under, that's what's happening in the modeling process. During this portion of the execution is where you would see a departure between two different carvers, and that's generally the way that they excavate their highs and lows in the foliate trail. One carver may use broader gouges and may interpret the drawing in a more drastic sense, where the other may be more graceful, using slower curves and shallower gouges. This one is this way. Crazy. Keeping this edge. What he's looking to get out of his carving in coloration is achieved through depth.
Try my luck with this one. Nope, it's gotta go this way. Pencil drawing in an artist's work, he needs to use shading and value to give his drawing life. A carver uses veining and depth to create the shadow and give his carving life. What I see veining doing is accentuating the movement that we've already created in the flow of the general shape of the carving. And then when you have leaves and loops trailing off of that general path, the veining becomes an accent to all of that movement. And all of a sudden, you really understand what the carver was after and what the design was meant to be by that movement.
There's really very little animation. So the veining itself brings everything to life. In terms of veining, I can say with confidence that aspect of carving is what drew me to it. The veining is really the final step in what we do as carvers.
That's a pretty neat little character there to focus on. The Courtenay School appears to be applying a lot of effort to fluidity of movement and beauty of the curve. That's paramount. And then when decorating the surface with veining, that is also kept in mind for that process as well. So in the modeling process and in the final step, which is veining, the biggest importance to them, I think, was fluidity of movement and just a real beautiful design altogether.
A clear difference that can be seen between these two carvers shows up in the central shell on each crest rail. You'll notice that the rendering of the Courtenay School carvers is very fluid, very graceful, very gentle, and executed in a little bit more of a shallow way. In contrast to the spiky leaf carver, he's more interested in seeing how deep he can go in the veins between the highs and lows of the shell, the lobes of the shell.
The spiky leaf carver's work looks a little more architectural in a sense than the Courtenay School of Carvers.